Education Business Meeting will get started, and Denise, we will start with roll call.
Rachel Wise.
Present.
Lily Larson.
Present.
Glenn Flint.
Here.
John Witzel.
Here.
Molly O'Halloran.
Present.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
And Commissioner Bloomstead.
Present.
All present.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted on the east wall of this room on the south side of the door. Live web streaming should be, or may be, available through the State Board of Education website, www.education.ne.gov/state board. We learned just this morning they're having a little technical issues, and so we're not sure if the live web streaming is up and going, but hopefully it will be shortly. Board members, please remember to engage your microphones before speaking and turn them off when you're finished. And please turn off your personal cell phones. Thank you. Next, we'll move to the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March 3rd and 4th, 2016 meetings?
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second by Pat Tim. Denise, please call the roll.
Patrick McPherson.
Aye.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Glenn Flint.
Yes.
Lily Larson.
Yes.
And Rachel Wise.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Commissioner, are there any recommended changes for today's agenda?
I don't believe I have any, so.
Okay. Is there a motion then to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second by John Witzel, a motion by Lily, second by John Witzel. Any questions or comments? If not, Denise, please call the roll.
Lily Larson.
Yes.
Glenn Flint.
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Aye.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
8 yes.
We'll now have our public comment period. Thanks to the members of the public who are in attendance today. We have had no requests for special appearance, so we will start with our regular public comment period. Need to make sure people have signed in, and there are signing cards in the back. So first one to sign in is Jay Sears. So Jay. Good morning, and you will have 5 minutes.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Jay Sears, and I work for the Nebraska State Education Association, and I'm here before you to speak on behalf of Action Item 7.6. I was one of the members of the team that went to Bellevue University, and I happen to have been also one of the team members that did Grace University a number of years ago. In fact, most of our team were on the review of Grace University and spent 4 years helping them become a teacher ed preparation institution. So we had an experienced team, though we hadn't worked for 10, 15 years. But it's always nice to see old friends show up when it's time to work with educator preparation institutions. And just wanted to thank John for coming along and seeing the process so that he can report back to you that we're pretty rigorous about letting people become educator preparation institutions, because we want the best prepared educators in Nebraska, and many times our universities also send people out to other states, and so we want them to represent Nebraska. It was an enjoyable experience. We were very pleased with what Bellevue University presented. They seem to be all ready to go. I think they have a unique, if you will, clientele to work with. It warms my heart that they're working with our military community as they come in and out of Offutt and the area, and are helping people be prepared for whatever careers they may follow after they leave the military. And then the other thing I'd like to share with you is there's a person in the back that is following me. She's not a stalker. Cindy Kopich is one of our staff members and is an organizational specialist, works out in southwestern part of Nebraska. So she commutes from Bellevue all the way to the Panhandle and spends lots of time on the road. And she is going to be trying to learn the ropes of what it is that I do with the State Board and the Department of Education. She got to go to her first Nebraska Council on Teacher Ed meeting in March to see that process that advises you on endorsements and certification and accreditation of our teacher ed preparation institutions. So it's great to know that the organization that I've worked for 32 years is really interested in succession. So maybe I can actually leave what it is I do and enjoy doing with you all. And then I can just sit at home, and if the TV works, I can just watch and yell at you from there instead of trying to, keep a straight face when I sit in the back corner. So I know well, my wife will probably want me out of the house, so you just keep your business meetings and work sessions going, and I'll have something to do in my retirement someday. So thank you. Have a good day. Please get to know Cindy. I know she'll get to know you all. She's a former board member from Bellevue Public Schools and has done graduate work and has a doctorate from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. So she has much more education than I have. So I'm just a lowly master's degree. So it's great talking to you this morning. And
What's Cindy's last name again?
Kopich, C-O-P-I. Yeah.
C-O-P-I-C-H.
Right, see, and my strength was not spelling or math, so.
Thanks, Jay. Next, we have a request from Deb Andrews. Good morning, Mrs. Andrews.
Good morning.
You will have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this microphone on?
I believe so.
Okay, thank you. I was disappointed to learn that you're going to redo the rules for public comment. I think it's important that you make the rules so that it's easy for citizens to come and talk without a lot of preparation, so you could fill the room with citizens. There are a few citizens that come as it is, so I was disappointed to learn that. I was here when you declined citizen math standards comments, deferring instead to union comments about grandchildren. The union is always here, unimpeded at this microphone. Are contract negotiations monthly? I guess I'm not real clear why they are always here. There are members of this board selected, supported, and marketed by the union to serve. How much control does the union have over education? I've recently learned the anti-communist clause was taken out of the Union Constitution in the 1990s. The National Education Association is the largest union in the nation. For those of you who have a close relationship with the union, and particularly the union official, I have a question, and I know you can't answer it today, but I would like an answer to this question. Why was the anti-communist clause taken out of the Union Constitution by unanimous vote? What is the purpose of that? Communism is not consistent with our Constitution. It appears the union has a large influence on all things education. I think this is an important question, and I'm concerned that the union has organized our education system, our teachers. I think they should not be allowed to do that. I do seek an answer to that question, and I urge you to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Andrews. Next, we have Henry Burke. Good morning, Mr. Burke.
Good morning.
You will have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank-
My name is Henry Burke. I would like to discuss ESSA and public participation at board meetings. Roughly 30 years ago, I started school. I could tell you that I started school in 1950, but I won't do that because it will sidetrack you. You're trying to figure out how old I am. We didn't have preschool back then, so I went directly into kindergarten. Because my kindergarten was excellent at teaching phonics, I learned to read and spell very well. My twin brother's kindergarten teacher was not quite as good at phonics. As a result, I was always better speller than my twin brother. He's much smarter than I am, than me, and has done postdoctoral work beyond his PhD in neuropsychology. Obviously, both of us had the same parents and the identical environment. Our mother had a college degree in English, prepared to teach, and read books to us every day while we were young. This side-by-side comparison demonstrates the importance of teaching phonics at a young age. Even though I did not attend preschool, I did very well in school and got a good education. Let's talk about preschool, or what educators like to call early childhood education. Commissioner Bloomstead is set to award $1.2 million in early childhood education grants to 13 school districts in Nebraska. With 293 children involved, the cost per child will be about $4,200. Is this grant program and similar federal programs cost effective? Because the federal Head Start program has been around for 50 years, we should examine its effectiveness. Head Start is a miserable failure. The Obama administration's Health and Human Services Department, HHS, studied the Head Start program. According to HHS's own empirical evaluation, Head Start has had no impact on participating children's cognitive abilities, social, emotional well-being, or their parents' parenting practices. A study published in 2012 by the Obama administration found that students who participated in the Head Start preschool program actually fared worse on several levels than students who did not. Let me ask you a question. What percentage of 4-year-olds attend preschool? If you answered 55%, you have been reading the White House talking points. The Obama administration has been pointing to a study by the Liberal Economic Policy Institute that claims only 55% of 4-year-olds in America attend a voluntary preschool. The Washington-based Brookings Institution decided to audit the Economic Policy Institute study. Using the same NCES data that EPI used, Brookings found that 69% of American children who entered kindergarten in the 2010-2011 school year had voluntarily attended a preschool program the year before. The reason for the 14 percentage point difference is that the White House and EPI included voluntary attendance in preschool by 3-year-olds to drag down the percentage. Instead of the EPI's 55% attendance figures, Brookings pegs the preschool attendance rate at 69%. That's a 14% difference. There's a wide range of costs for preschool programs. For example, the state-level programs in Oklahoma and Florida cost less than $3,000 per child. At $4,200 per child, Nebraska is running slightly above the Oklahoma and Florida programs. The Education Commissioner is also considering recommendations for the federally funded 21st Century Community Learning Centers. The grants total $1.6 million. Jane Robbins said this about community learning centers. This means that schools will be expanded to replace family and church as the center of every child's life, offering myriad services, including mental health programs. Few things should alarm parents more than the prospect of the government's assessing their child's mental health and preparing to fix any problem the government claims to find. Georgia State Senator William Ligon correctly termed the community learning centers parent replacement centers. The state board is proposing changes in the rules for public participation at board meetings. The new rules will make it more difficult to obtain special appearances, and the required lead time will expand to over 1 week. The state board should make it very clear that the request for appearance must be sent by a certain day and time. Just simply give an example, by Friday, 5 p.m.
Mr. Burke,
the
sorry.
week before the Friday board meeting.
Time is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Next, we have Rachel Pinkerton. Good morning, Mrs. Pinkerton.
Good morning.
You will have 5 minutes for your comments this morning.
I'm distributing an article entitled This is Why Finland Has the Best Schools. We have talked about Finland repeatedly over the course of our education reform conversation. And I think I ask you to look at what we can learn directly about what Finland does. We're told they have a history of producing the highest global test scores in the Western world, recently ranked the most literate nation in the world. As you'll see, they withhold formal instruction in Finland until children are 7. Prior to that, there are a lot of children in preschool and daycares, but the emphasis on play and songs, games, and conversation. And as children progress in elementary school, they continue to experience a mandatory 15 minutes per hour of outdoor free play. Very interesting that they are getting the results that they're getting, and what's more interesting and troubling, I ask you to be very skeptical of federal influence on early childhood education as we expand our focus into this area. And specifically, let's look at Finland. We were told when Common Core was launched, our low test scores were the pretext for nationalizing our school standards. And specifically, we were held up to Finland. Look at how we're suffering compared to Finland. And then, by the way, people who had no experience and no interest in what helps children thrive wrote the Common Core state standards. And if you recall, there was a protest by 500 cross-discipline early childhood specialists, teachers, researchers, professors, child psychiatrists, child psychologists, pediatricians, who said, whoa, these your standards, have you ever met a little kid? These are terrible standards. They're gonna cause suffering, not learning. These are developmentally inappropriate. A lot of scripted formal education going down lower and lower, and worksheets and tests and things that are not only not helpful, but are really counterproductive for little children. So I ask you to keep that in mind and be, again, very thoughtful and respectful and skeptical about the trends and the influence that comes from the federal level, and don't expect that it's necessarily going to be constructive or even well-intended. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pinkerton. At this point, that is all of the signing cards I have received. So let's just take a short couple of minute break. Like 9:30, we're gonna be back, okay? Hearings today. No hearings today. We will move on, no executive session, to item 7, action items. And our first action item is to approve proposed revisions to State Board Policy B12, public participation in board meetings. And I'm going to turn it over to Pat Tim.
Thank you. We have had discussion in committee and also some this morning, and our whole intent is to clarify and make it easy for the public to come in and visit with us. So I'm going to turn it over to the commissioner to explain the clarification so that everyone is clear.
Yeah, so I'll walk through just a little bit. One of our intentions of changing this particular policy around the timeline of when folks would submit for public comment and a special request for public comment was to actually get clear that it would be Monday by 5 o'clock. And somehow in the conversation we had to adjust because our policies don't have us in a set meeting time all the time. We could have other meetings, we could have other things. And so when I reviewed it again, even yesterday as you were talking about it and reviewed it and was looking at the way that it got worded, I think it actually makes sense to, instead of saying 4 days before the first day of a meeting, it would say 3 days before the first day of the meeting, which would be Monday at 5 o'clock for our typical schedule. The reason that we can't make that explicit in the policy is because what I just mentioned about we could have board meetings on different times, and we want to make it as clear as possible. What I also suggest that we would do on our side of it is we would post what the deadline would be on the website, so it's also clear beyond the policy that we could just post for each one of the particular board meetings what that deadline would be. And actually I've appreciated Mr. Burke's comments. I've chatted with him before about this being unclear because he would send a request and I would say, well, it says 3 days before, and so the intention was very much to make that clear, and I think by taking up 3 days instead of 4, it makes sense. So we've prepared a version 2 of the policy that's on your site. The only change in that one compared to the one that was presented yesterday is instead of striking the 3 and inserting 4, we would just leave the 3 in place and have 3 days. So that's what version 2 would be.
So Pat, do you have action?
Yes, I would move that we accept, or move that we vote on the public participation at board meetings B12 as presented today.
Second.
So we have a motion and the second by John Witzel. Okay, now, is there discussion on the changes that you have in front of you? Molly?
I have a question on page 2. It says a board member may request of the chair a point of clarification. It says on page 2, a board member may request of the chair a point of clarification in regard to a speaker's comments. Pat, what does that mean exactly?
We talked about that a little bit yesterday. Many times, not always, but sometimes, when the public comes in, they're wanting to bring before us something that they're concerned about that may not be on our agenda.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed, due to the open meetings laws, to have a conversation if it's not on our agenda. So if you're asking for clarification, then that's up to the chair to get that information for you. But we're not going to have a conversation back and forth with the person that's giving the public comment.
So what does that exactly mean? So if someone makes a presentation and I want a clarification, do I ask Rachel to ask them?
No,
What do you mean? Or-
Right, you would ask the chair to be able to ask a clarifying question.
It's
So
just
this
get
morning, an
permission
example
to- yeah.
would have been if you wanted someone's last name again or the spelling of the last name. It's really information, clarification of information is the request to the chair, and then you ask what it would be, and either if it's not in alignment with the appropriate request of information, if it's more engaging in discussion, those kinds of things, and the chair may deny your request. But if it really is a point of clarification, you miss the name of something, or you miss the name of an article that someone talked about. So that's really the process, so that everyone understands that if there is a point of clarification that's needed for information, that there is a process that you can request that. That doesn't change that we move into an open discussion with members of the public during the public comment period, but it just gives guidance into if you have a point of clarification and a question for information.
And we
Pat,
could-
did you want to
and we-
add to this?
and we
Because I know
could-
Pat
yeah.
brought some of this forward as
And we
well.
could-
Well, I think I kind of started this discussion several months ago, but, as an example, I might have asked for a point of clarification this morning as to whether Rachel, who appeared, Pinkerton, represented an organization. That might have been an appropriate, I just might have been interested in that. That would have been a point of information that you could have done. If I wanted to get into discussion on the issue of whether 3 days or 4 days now, that would have been something that you probably would have said wasn't appropriate, although it's on the agenda today. But, if it had been a different issue with, on Finland, and well, why are they doing this in Finland and why aren't we? That would have been a discussion issue that you would have found, not appropriate to ask. So I think this is an improvement, and I like it, and I think it responds to what we need to be doing.
Thank you,
Lily?
Patrick.
As a point of clarification.
There we go.
Sorry, I didn't ask permission to ask for the spelling of the name. When folks do come and address the board, and they do raise a question, do we officially send a response to every person who addresses the board? First of all, to say thank you very much for attending the meeting and expressing your point of view. Secondly, if they ask a question, that their concerns be addressed and be put into writing. I think that is something that should be done, and it's probably not written into our policy, but I consider it's a courtesy, and maybe I'm expecting too much, but I
Well-
think it's the appropriate way to
And I understand
respond.
what you're saying, Lily. I think the department certainly does. I mean, we do have people from the public that prepare a question in writing, and that is addressed. Because I know the commissioner has talked several times about people saying, I need to know this or I need to know that. And so those are responded to. I think just trying to catch during their presentation that they have a question may be a little more difficult, Matt.
Can I just add one point to that? So sometimes it's hard to tell if it's a rhetorical question sometimes or actually something that needs a response. And I think Mrs. Andrews asked something for specifically today that I think she had said it in such a way that she truly wants an answer to that question. But often I feel like there's certain questions that just pop up that are somewhat rhetorical. But your point about kind of reaching out to folks, we do that. I wouldn't want that, so to say, in a policy because it's a little bit of a subjective judgment at a moment in time. But certainly our intent, even of us taking a break, is to help clarify with folks that maybe had a question or a conversation, gives us a chance to be able to do that. So I actually like that process, and it's probably not clear. Probably when we go off from our video presentation or from the video streaming, but we take that break with the intention of being able to address those questions individually with folks who come from the public. And I actually think that's a really good thing. I think it's a good thing for you to be able to interact with the public that show up. And so that's really become our approach to that. And I think that's very helpful for the folks who show up, but sometimes the folks who are watching don't understand that as well.
Can I go a step further? Is that having served 12 years on the Lincoln School Board, traditionally a letter does go to every person thanking him. And I'm not asking for this to be in policy. That's not the point. I'm just making a recommendation. I think there are certain courtesies and things that are appropriate to the taxpayers who show up at our meetings.
And
So, it's just, I'm old school in some respects, and that's an old school thing, maybe, but I still think it's appropriate.
And that is, the policy committee can have a discussion on that. I think that's not looking at something to impact the policy, the motion on the floor for the policy at this point.
This is about the policy. If someone asks a question like, why does another organization outrule communism? If you write a response, do you say, this is the organization's contact information, ask them? Because we don't have any power over that. I mean, when people are watching, we're talking about policy in public meetings, that's not under our purview. I'm just wondering if you in fact give guidance where to find answers, because someone listening might think that is our purview and it's not. Do you? Do you give her guidance or a questioner? I'm
When-
asking
when
for
someone's coming
clarification.
from the public,
Yeah, the audience
I-
asking us a question.
I mean, I think it's a fair point when we're asked a question that's not really underneath
Our power.
Yeah, and so really the question, I think, in that particular case, just to use the example, was to ask us about what another organization did, which, you know, I suppose we could ask too, but many people could ask. It would probably be more appropriate that that organization would answer that question.
But I think as the commissioner indicated too, that is why we have been scheduling and taking a break, because we can, each as board members, have responsibility also to reach out to the public when they present in whatever way, and that's our opportunity to do so in whichever way feels most appropriate. Any other questions or comments? Glenn?
Yeah, I'm just trying to ask a clarifying question myself about, it says here, requests for a special appearance must be made in writing to the Commissioner of Education or a board member, and received no later than 5 p.m. Central Time at least 3 days prior to the first day of the meeting in order to permit such an appearance to be placed on the published agenda. So I'm thinking 3 days is 72 hours. Am I overthinking this? Because Monday at 5 p.m. would be too late. Okay, well, but Brian Halstead would want me to do that. And the other question is, this puts some sort of obligation on me to do something, right? Somebody's requested an appearance, I've got to get to the commissioner then by 5 p.m. on Monday, right?
And that is part of it. If a request comes into a board member, we have to understand what our obligations are and responsibilities are. And it all comes back also to making sure we're able to post it in time as a part of our responsibility to publish our agenda. I had Pat and then Maureen.
Doesn't answer his question.
Didn't answer the question.
He didn't answer the question.
72-hour thing.
Can I speak to that? I'd like when we actually have the vote to note for the record that the commissioner gave us an example of a meeting held on Thursday where the deadline would be 5 o'clock on Monday. I'd like to have that reflected. I think that goes to the intent and clarifies this without going back and rewording the policy. So that's all right. I can make that for the record now, or I can make that when I cast my vote, whatever is appropriate for our Robert's Rules of Order.
You're not looking at it as an amendment to the actual policy, just as a recommendation.
I think if we get it in, I think if we
that's
get it
appropriate now.
in the minutes, and it's in the minutes for the
Yes.
record, that pretty well summarizes the intent of this board and the intent of the organization. So
And that
I'd
just
be happy to.
double captures then the intent. Glenn?
Well, I would just recommend trying to embed that in the policy, and maybe what we want to say, instead of at least 3 days prior, say at least 48 hours prior to, and then 5 p.m. Central Time, so that you've got that buffer of 48 hours. I'll be-
So right now, you're just putting that as discussion, not in any way as an amendment. And the other option that we could have, would be if this wants to go back to the policy committee, to make sure that we clarify the language.
Even more.
I think you should.
Yeah, this is messy.
I will bow to the committee. Do you want to take this again, or do you want to move forward?
I would move that we table this until the next, till the next meeting in order to give the policy committee an opportunity to do some strategic rewording to deal with this issue.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have the motion to table and the second. Denise, please call the roll. Lily, seconded.
Rachel Weisz?
Yes.
Lily Larson?
Yes.
Glenn Flint?
Yes.
John Witzel?
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran?
Yes.
Patricia Tim?
Yes.
Maureen Nichols?
Yes.
Patrick McPherson?
Yes, and may I just say that I think this is a case where the public input really helped us in doing something, and I'm appreciative of that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we will send that back then to the policy committee. Thank you very much. If you do have any suggestions for language, please make sure you get that to Pat as the chair of the policy committee. All right, Pat, you're still on, so we'll move on to item 2, to approve proposed revision State Board Policy B19, staff research and assistance.
Let me get reorganized. Okay. Our next one is B19.
Is your mic on?
I'm sorry. The next policy that we discussed was B19, which is staff research and assistance. This again is on your e-meetings. And the only change is that the commissioner shall provide reports to the full board of the requests made of staff. And that's the very last sentence in the policy, and that's something that I think is probably not necessary for the commissioner to have to do one more list of things. It was just, just cleaning it up a little bit, because we know that board members have the opportunity to, and all of your, what you can request and how that goes about is still in there. It's just that we're not asking the commissioner to make a report. And I would move that we accept the policy as presented.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Glenn?
I'm just wondering, is this a hard report to put together? Is there a lot of requests or?
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, it somewhat is, just because you can have any number of questions asked, and is that supposed to be in there? Is that not supposed to be in there? What I'll tell you is it's always my intent to keep you informed of things that are happening and major work that's happening. And I think it was Pat McPherson that said something in the policy committee that, I don't know if you'd be willing to mention that again. It's just kind of one more thing that it's a hard one to exactly define what that would look like for the long run, and it could take a lot of work, has taken, because once we started to try to keep track of it, actually started taking quite a bit more work than maybe it was going to be valuable, so.
Have we actually ever gotten this report before?
Right,
No.
that's exactly the other piece, so I think the line from Patrick was, well, it's just one more thing we can hang the commissioner on, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, can I speak to?
Please.
Yeah, and I agree that, if we're not doing it and it doesn't have a lot of value. I asked the commissioner this week, had a request from a constituent that wanted to know the name of every school district in Nebraska. And it didn't take a lot of time. He professionally took care of it, but I don't know why he would have to report that kind of thing to the board. That's just part of his job on a daily basis. So I support what we're doing here with this policy change.
Okay, well, I think I heard. So, Denise.
I think we had a call for that.
I think we did. Denise, please call the roll.
Molly O'Halloran?
Yes.
Patricia Tim?
Yes.
Maureen Nichols?
Yes.
Patrick McPherson?
Yes.
John Witzel?
Yes.
Glenn Flint?
Yes.
Larry Larson?
Yes.
Rachel Weisz?
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. Pat, you're still not off the hook yet. The next item is to adopt the State Board of Education resolution recognizing May 13th as Nebraska State Fire Day. And you do have that resolution in your materials. Is there a motion?
There is a motion to present a resolution on state fire.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or comments? The resolution is attached. It won't be read today, but it is attached in the record.
I, again, think this is bureaucratic overkill. I dearly appreciate the governor's enthusiasm to asking the various departments to affirm this resolution. I have nothing against firefighters or fire or anything else, but I sometimes think that we ought to keep in mind what our job is. It's education, and it's not the proliferation of every resolution that somebody asks us to pass. Now I'm going to get myself into real trouble because I often look at what the legislature does, and there are a body of 49 people that pass a lot of resolutions that are, in my mind, very meaningless, and we just don't need to do that. So, personal thoughts.
Lily?
Is this maybe more acknowledging the extraordinary service of the fire departments? That's how I look at it. I do know that in the city of Lincoln, the establishment of the fire houses are crucial to the public schools because we've got small cities in our high schools. We've got over 2,200 in a couple of our high schools. They're bigger than a lot of, probably the majority of cities. So I think, hey, this is a very dangerous occupation, and this is one I understand, but in the case where this impacts the schools, this is school business. I disagree that you're saying it's not. I see this as crucial to the security and protection of our kids.
Maureen?
I concur with much of what Lily has shared. Being a former educator, elementary educator, the fire department in Grand Island, they came every year during Fire Prevention Week and did a lesson with every grade in every school, and were present at every school with their trucks, with their smokehouse or whatever. It was a huge learning piece for the children and a good reminder every year for us. And it was something that we didn't really have to address then as a classroom teacher because they did all that component for us. So I see this as a resolution that is important.
Molly, then Pat.
And I do want to, $42 million in 2015 is a significant loss resulting in fire. I also think as a mother of 5 kids that there's some children in homes that they've used fire inappropriately, and there are big problems. And living in western Nebraska, when it's dry out in the fields, if people do random bonfires, we have some big burns, for those of you that don't live in the country. So fire prevention is very important.
Pat?
We have big burns in the Omaha area also. If this is so important, all it's going to do is end up in the minutes of this board meeting. If it's so important, then we ought to specifically send this resolution directly to all 245 or 54 school districts if it's important. Otherwise, this is just an inane action in my part because I don't believe any of those, the majority of those school boards are even going to look at this.
I'd like to say that we just passed the safety and security standards for all of our schools. Thank you very much for passing it to the NDE staff. Included in those safety and security standards, we had inputs from fire departments, rescue individuals, and so forth. So they are involved. They are partners in the safety and the security of our children. And also, I'd like to remind all of us that fire departments make frequent visits to elementary schools, high school, public schools in regards to, if you will, lessons on fire security, safety, home security. So they're in the schools, they know the schools, we need them, and thank God for our firefighters.
I'd like to amend the resolution to specify that this proclamation be sent directly to each of the state school boards.
There's amendment being made to the motion. So,
Can I add a point of clarification? Because I think he said amend the resolution.
yes.
And did you mean amend the motion?
Amend the motion,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we have amendment to the motion in a second. I believe we need to vote on the amendment. Thank you. Denise, is there discussion?
When we have a resolution, when I was on the local board, we got those. Don't they automatically go to all the 245 school districts? Which is your intent. It doesn't just in our minutes.
We post them to our website, so they're part of the resolutions on the website. I mean, we can send something out to them. I believe the state fire marshal asked us to consider this, and obviously underneath the governor's office relative to that. I think they intend some campaign around that, so we'll see how it goes, but finding a way that we can get that delivered based on this potential amendment to the motion is fine too. We can find a way to get it
I
done.
just thought all resolutions were distributed. That was my question.
Any other discussion? If not, Denise, please call the roll on the amendment.
Rachel White,
Yes.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
8 yes.
All right, is there any other discussion? If not, we will have a roll call on the motion as amended. Okay. Denise, please call the roll.
And for clarification, Patricia made the original motion and John seconded it, correct? Okay. Glenn Flint,
Yes.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
8 yes.
All right, and I'm going to take a minute to read the resolution into the record. Since we've had this discussion on it, I think it's important to do so. So the resolution reads as follows. Nebraska State Fire Day, Nebraska State Board of Education resolution. Whereas fires cause great damage to both property and lives, and whereas current statistics from the Nebraska Fire Information Reporting System show that Nebraska firefighters responded to 92,483 calls for service in 2015, and whereas in 2015, Nebraska reported 4,672 calls for service that resulted in approximately $41,978,434 in total loss, and whereas in 2015, fires in Nebraska resulted in 17 civilian deaths, 51 civilian injuries, no firefighter deaths, and 83 firefighter injuries, and whereas national fire prevention leaders and the United States Fire Administration remind us that fire is everyone's fight, and whereas Nebraska schools and the fire service recognize the tremendous impact a fire can have on a child's family, education, or community, and whereas schools are an important part of our collaborative effort to reduce the occurrence of fires and to help youth become better educated and responsible citizens, and whereas schools reach youth in supervised and localized settings, and whereas State Fire Day has been designated as a time for all public, private, and parochial schools to focus on fire prevention. Now, therefore, the Nebraska State Board of Education joins other state officials in proclaiming May 13th, 2006 as State Fire Day in Nebraska, with the intention of encouraging all schools to recognize this day with appropriate exercises. Right. Yeah, we'll move on to item 4. And item 4 is to grant the commissioner approval to contract for classification and compensation consultant services for an amount up to $115,000. Is there a motion?
I make the motion to grant the commissioner approval to contract for classification and compensation consult services for an amount of $115,000.
Second.
So we have a motion and second. Any questions, discussion?
I'd like to just, say I believe it's been, did you say 10 years, commissioners, or more since we've done this? And, I understand that it's an expense, but I think it's, in the business world, we would do this much more frequently probably to make sure that we were being competitive, that we were, utilizing our people in the best manner. So I strongly support it. The only thing that I would like to see in addition in the future is a real work study to determine whether we've got people doing jobs that don't need to be done or that can be consolidated, and I think that's a worthwhile effort to think about in the future. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Denise, please call the roll.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
John Wetzel.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
8 yes.
All right, we'll move on to item 5, adopt proposed revisions to Rule 81, 92 NAC 81, rules and regulations for the high school equivalency program. Is there a motion?
I move we adopt the proposed revisions to Rule 81, 92, NEC 81, rules and regulations for the high school equivalency program.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Molly and a second by John. Any questions or comments? Glenn?
I missed this discussion yesterday in the work session, but when I read through this, I was thinking about Jody Feynman and Hannah, who came and talked about the problems she was having getting through the GED. Would this have helped them?
It might. I'm sorry for interrupting.
That's all right, John.
So they were right,
Yeah.
in a way. That
Glenn, are you aware of the, if you will, the standards changed at the GED in regards to bringing it down from 150 to 145 in the past couple of years? There's 150 students now that qualify for passing the GED due to the standards change, and this applies to those.
Okay, so these students haven't been able to pass it, but now suddenly they are.
That's correct.
They have
And
passed
now
it.
what happens is with the rule change, it go off to the Attorney General and then off to the Governor for signature. These people are really chomping at the bit to get their GEDs and move on with their lives in regards to careers, education, and so forth.
So this is retroactive then?
Just as soon as the Governor signs it, it will be.
Okay.
In nationalized, they have passed the test. It just goes through this process with the Governor.
Okay.
They've been really working hard at this, a lot of the students.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments? If not, Denise, please call the roll.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Wetzel.
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 6, and that's grant provisional approval to Bellevue University to phase in a teacher education program. Is there a motion? John?
I'd like to grant provisional approval to Bellevue University to phase in a teacher education program.
Okay, so we have the motion and the second by Pat Tim, just by a hair. Is there any comments, question? Lily?
Again, for clarification, when it's provisional, does that mean that it's there long-term, or if it's under continual evaluation, or what?
If you recall yesterday from Sharon's presentation, there is a period of time in which they have to continue to gear up 3 years to get everything in place as a part of that process. But this really gives them the door that's open to start the process.
And I said this yesterday, but Glenn was not here. So my concern was that in these new programs, that they be very much aware of the current work being done by the board, and that they acknowledge that in terms of preparation of people going into teaching. They understand the new accountability system, how it's on an annual basis, and how they will be responsible to respond to that. So it's something new, and I would hope that all established programs do this too, but here's the opportunity with the new program to make sure that they acknowledge the AQuest and the new accountability system. So thank you, Sharon.
If I may add also, Glenn, I did not realize the time and investment that Bellevue University is taking in regards to creating this program in the next 3 years. It is lots of resources and lots of time. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, Denise, please call the roll.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
8 yes.
All right, moving on to item 7, authorize the commissioner to negotiate an agreement with the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services for the use of Child Care Development Block Grant funds. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, Denise, please call the roll.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Lily Larson.
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
8 yes.
All right, moving on to item 8, authorize the commissioner to negotiate and enter into a contract with Brana Information Group for software, hardware, services, and training related to early childhood observations and records. Is there a motion? Molly?
I move to authorize the commissioner to negotiate and enter into contract up to the amount of $48,155 for classroom assessment software, software services, and training, in addition to the purchase of hardware for up to the amount of $6,000.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
I
Molly?
believe yesterday when Melody was visiting about this, and I'm doing this for you, Glenn, is actually they used to do it hard copy, and then sometimes there was discrepancies between what they wrote and how they added sums, and this would take care of some of that. But I also think it moves early childhood into that digital world of record for maximizing opportunities for these kiddos. So, and it's a good idea. I hope it works well. Device, right?
Yes, please come up, Melody.
We'll ask the expert.
They're surfaces. The department has we're using the same type of device that the department uses for other things, but they will be dedicated Surface, like Surface Pro 3 or 4s, I don't know which. So.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, Denise, please call the roll. Thank you, Melody.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
8 yes.
We'll move on to item 9, grant the commissioner the authority to approve awards for new and expansion early childhood education program grants to identified public school districts. Is there a motion? Today, is there a motion?
I grant the commissioner the authority to approve awards for new and expansion early childhood education program grants to identified public school districts.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion?
Rachel?
Pat?
I said this yesterday, I will abstain from voting. Beatrice is receiving an expansion grant, and I do sign off on that because I chair the Child Abuse Prevention Committee in our area, and they sign off on that grant, so I will abstain.
Thank you, Pat. No other comments? Denise, please call the roll.
Rachel Wise,
Yes.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patricia Tim,
Abstain?
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 abstain.
All right, moving on to item 10, grant the commissioner the authority to approve the non-public schools appearing on the accompanying list to operate for the 2016-17 school year in accordance with the provisions of Rule 14, Regulations and Procedures for the legal operation of approved non-public schools.
So
Is there a
moved.
motion? It's a motion. by Pat Tim, second by Glenn Flint. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none. Denise, please call the roll.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
8 yes.
All right, next we'll move on to item 8, approval of consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
So we have a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none. Denise, please call the roll.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
John Witzel,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson.
Yes.
8 yes.
All right, we have no special presentations today, so we'll move on to item 10, board reports, dates, and discussion items. And I just want to start out, I know several of us are going to FFA today, and the staff pulled together a document that I had sitting here, and I don't know if it ended up getting passed out because I don't have one. So if you have a document that looks like it did get passed out, I'm taking yours. Okay, thank you. The CTSO State Conference attendance, staff did pull together information since many of us have attended some of the other career and technical education student organizations that really shows how many students are involved across the state in those organizations. And I know, Pat, you attended DECA, and you said there was about 1,000, and Lily attended, well, 930. You were really close, very close on that estimate. And I believe a couple of you are going to FBLA tomorrow, which has 2,425 students. And as you continue to look at the list today, this afternoon, there's 6,300. So overall, over 13,000 students and individuals involved in those student organizations. And I appreciate staff shared that information after some of the discussion that we had yesterday. Lily.
In regard to that, I'm sure Patrick saw this too, that it wasn't just the students who were there, but the teachers who are putting in their time above and beyond. These are assignments that they do on top of teaching. And better yet, what really thrilled me were the parents of the students who were in attendance. That's where I got the 1,000. There may have been 930, but believe me, there were the parents of the kids in attendance who were literally teary-eyed over how proud they were of their students and how they were doing. So I think there were 1,000.
It's a great reminder of all the activities that students are involved in that really make that experience such a comprehensive experience, including those co-curricular and extracurricular activities. So moving on to 10.1, is there a motion to approve the meeting participation? And you do have that updated list in your documents as well.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
I'll just
Pat.
add for the record what I've done in the past, that my comments are the same as they were last month. This board needs a travel expense policy that, among other things, defines appropriate functions that board members may attend at NDE expense, that defines or limits the amounts that board members may expend on an annual basis, that defines appropriate levels of reimbursements for meals, mileage, lodging, registration, etc., that defines the difference between board functions that are reimbursable by the state and constituent and non-official functions that should be paid for by board members personally or by his or her campaign account.
Any other comments or?
Just for clarification, I think you're doing that, aren't you, right now in policy?
Yes, we are, and I'm hopeful that we will have something to present next month, and maybe then I'll leave this issue alone for a while.
I think that would be helpful to you and to all of us. So, thank you for pursuing.
And I will assure you, we had an excellent discussion yesterday.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Denise, please call the roll.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Yes.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Glenn Flint,
Yes.
Lily Larson,
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
8 yes.
All right. Item 2 is monthly board travel expense report. You have that information in front of you. And then again, item 11, as you know, you have information from items and written reports that we don't cover. Before we go to adjournment, just a reminder, we do have 2 committee meetings happening once we're finished here. The Strategic Planning Committee is meeting, and the Data and Continuous Improvement Committee is meeting, and then we'll be meeting at 1:30 in front of the State Office Building to go over to FFA for those who are going over to the award ceremony this afternoon. Maureen?
The information I received said that events started at 1:30. I didn't know if that was a misunderstanding on my part.
Brian said, we'll double check and get information, but Brian said that he was picking us up. Did I say Brian? Must have been
Ryan.
thinking of the nephew or something. Brian will be picking us up at 1:30 and taking us over. So we'll clarify, but that is what he shared yesterday on time.
Maybe they're operating on state board time.
Oh, thanks. Lily did just share with me the locations that would involve my being able to see. So the strategic planning reading is in conference room B, and the
Data's
data
in C.
is in C. Data and continuous conference room C.
Do you want me to comment about that meeting I had yesterday?
If you just want to give a quick update, there was one other piece of information that Molly didn't share yesterday when we did the tenants on the positive partnership. So
And this is part of our Success and Access Domain Committee meeting. We had a group of people come from Nebraska for Founders Values, and they went to quite a bit of effort. So I wanted to share it to the rest of the membership. I think I do want to say that they really care about our kids, and they care about this comprehensive sexuality education. And I really liked how they were organized in their evidence, and that they were really saying it is important to have a certain amount of sex education in the schools. They just wanted to make the message strong and clear that abstinence should still be a component of this sexuality education. And I don't know about the rest of the members on the board, but I'll be reading their information. And I think when we do have, it's back to what you said about constituent concerns. When they come to us, I think it's important that we're respectful and consider their point of view. And I found they just had some really good ideas, and the conversation that ensues is important too, because our children, we definitely want to make sure that our comprehensive school health involves that component as well. And then the only second thing that I didn't say yesterday was about the safety and security standards. And just for your information, I didn't realize safety is in regard to the environment, like safety from fires or natural disasters, and security is human-related catastrophes. And I wanted just to take a moment to thank Jolene Palmer. She's not in the room, but she's done a wonderful job building consistent best practices, and I think the value of this tool is going to be awesome in all 245 districts. And it talks about prevention of these catastrophes, and then it really gets into, it has like an accompanying brochure that goes with it. But besides the prevention and all the standards, it really gives our school districts something to hang their hand on and take care of their kids in safety and security. So thank you, Jolene, wherever you are. And great teamwork with our partners.
thanks, Molly. Okay, we will move to item 12, adjournment. A work session will be held on Thursday, May 5th at 2 p.m. and a board meeting will be held on Friday, May 6th at 9 a.m. in this room. Thank you, everybody, and
And lunch is at
we'll move-
11:30, right?
And we'll move on to our committee meetings and get started with those, and lunch will be